Welcome everyone to our special webinar in celebration of World Mental Health Day 2024. Today, we gather to shine a light on the importance of mental health and well-being, not just as individuals, but as a community. This year's theme is "It is time to prioritize mental health in the workplace," underscores the critical need to foster supportive and inclusive work environments where mental health is a priority. I should start with a couple of words about us, about me. Having started my career in marketing communications at Ogilvy PR about 20 years ago, I found myself drawn back to my family roots in shipping. So 10 years ago, I made a conscious decision to switch to shipping and joined the industry after studying general law and completing my master's degree in maritime law. For the past 6 years, I have been working as a legal and human resources manager in the shipping and commodity trading industry, setting up teams and facing a variety of challenges at the workplace with employees, with management. So I sincerely hope that I will be adding value to our discussions from my work experience and the real case stories that we'll be analyzing. So I would like now to move to my co-pilot because I'm so very privileged to introduce Mrs. Stella Kiss. Let me share a few words about her. Stella is an experienced clinical psychologist and the general manager at Mental Health Support Solutions. With a robust background in hospital settings, Stella brings a wealth of experience to her role since she's dedicated to promoting mental and emotional well-being within the maritime sector, focusing on cultural psychology and creating an inclusive environment. At Mental Health Support Solutions, Stella's responsibilities are quite diverse. She provides on-vessel support, conducts one-on-one sessions, and leads relevant seminars and webinars. Additionally, she actively participates in panel discussions addressing critical issues such as mental health and sexual harassment at sea. Now, a few words about Mental Health Support Solutions. They are committed to enhancing the mental health and well-being of maritime workers as they offer a range of services, including psychological support, training programs, and resources tailored to the unique challenges faced by seafarers and onshore staff. More details about Stella and Stella's work you can find on her profile on LinkedIn. So together we'll be discussing about the signs of a toxic workplace today, actionable steps to take a supportive and mindful work environment, offering diverse perspectives on effectively implementing mental health initiatives. So Stella, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so pleased to have you with me in this series. And over to you. Should we perhaps start with a few words from you about a general overview about mental health? What is mental health?
That sounds great. Yes. Thank you so much for having me and for making this possible. Chris and I actually met early at the beginning of this year in Dubai and clicked and wanted to work towards on the same goals and come up with some presentations, spread some knowledge on mental health in the shipping industry, not only targeted to women, but targeted to everyone, seafarers, office workers. That was our initial goal. So I'm very glad that we're sitting together here today to discuss a little bit about mental health. I think we can start with just a little overview of what we mean by mental health, what it is in general. And in our workplace, we have a very holistic approach. So everything is connected, basically, what I always like to say, your mental health, your physical health, how you're feeling, how you're acting during the day. So it's very important. I mean, you can usually say 1 in 5 people every year experiences mental health illness or difficulties. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they are depressed or they have suicidal ideation, but this can be something like anxiety or sleep deprivation, sleep issues, something along those lines. I think mental health always sounds very scary, mental illness, but these can just be little things that can come and go, or obviously also stay for a longer period of time if nothing is done against it. Mental health is really important because this is also a presentation related to work, so it affects your work performance, your stamina at work, your motivation, how you're communicating with others, and also how you're communicating with your family back home. Basically, if you make sure that your mental health is going well, it's more likely that all the other aspects in your life will also feel more easy and more easygoing, and you will have a better overall feeling during the day. I think this is putting it shortly.
I totally agree with you. And should we go through the indicators of a mentally healthy person? How do they look like? Do they look like us?
I hope so. I hope they look like us. This would be a good image for promoting mental health. I mean, of course, you can hire a psychologist to kind of see a business psychologist, but usually these will all come at extra costs because people are more willing to pay for health checkups where you can see like a broken arm, or like it's easier for people to grasp if actually something is physically like
A blood
impairing
test
you.
or, yeah,
Compared to
rates.
mentally. So it also the indicators are more difficult to see, obviously. You don't have an X-ray of your brain where it just shows you that you're mentally healthy. It's not that easy, unfortunately. But usually a well-rounded, mentally healthy person will be in a better mood, but really a better mood, not the better mood mask we put on in our everyday life, but they will make it easier for them to have good connections with their family, with their friends. They oftentimes want to give back. They're grateful. They are very energetic. And they also have a better understanding of how to cope with stresses in their lives. When little problems arise, if you're feeling yourself very good, then it's more easy for you to tackle issues. Whereas if you're not feeling good, I think we all had that on a bad day, and something small happens, this will feel like a very big deal. Whether it's you tripping over something, your coffee spills, your pants get stuck in the door, like all these little things will all of a sudden become very big things and will drive you. Yeah, exactly. So if you're more mentally healthy or mentally, like your mental health is doing good, yes, mentally stable, those little things will not have as big of an impact on you. So that's like an easy way to kind of see how you're doing.
Right. So let's get into the main theme of our discussion today. What are the signs of a toxic workplace, and can we identify them early enough on a job, right? Because so many times we're joining a new work environment and we're not entirely sure if this environment is for us, or it depends obviously. However, there are certain signs that are already there when we join a new work environment. Can we identify them? How can we recognize those signs at the workplace?
So it's oftentimes difficult to recognize them because sometimes if you go into a new work environment, everything seems shiny and new and exciting. So we work together not only with like workers and stuff, but also with the company, with management, with HR. So before this presentation, I was speaking to some of the managers and they were saying kind of what they do in order to ensure that the environment is safe, everyone feels good and productive. One of the big things is employee surveys. I think there is a bit of a stigma around because people are oftentimes scared. Oh, is someone looking which email address I filled the survey out from? Will this reflect back on me? Will it make my life more difficult? But if you're sure that this will actually be anonymous, then those can be great to kind of see how satisfied are people with the job, what are the team dynamics like, and this will also allow for timely interventions. So if you see something's not going great, the earlier, the better it is in the workplace. Also, open communication. This seems like I think something that seems very natural, but oftentimes the communication processes maybe within the teams might be a bit more difficult. Hierarchies can also make this more difficult between newer, older employees. So it's important to really check in with the people from time to time.
Right. So it's really important to maintain an environment where people feel appreciated regardless of their special characteristics. Okay, and then like you said, monitoring workload and work-life balance, which is the biggest challenge of our days, right?
Very true. Yes, and I think this not only relate to the workplace, but this is also something I see in psychology, which is why we work with all psychologists all over the world, because everyone is affected differently. People have different symptoms. Some have more physical symptoms, some have more mental symptoms. It's all very, very different depending on where you're from. So by making these team building events and also learning about each other, this will help working together also much, much more. who is more like, some people are more sensitive about certain things. For some, the routines are different, praying, like there's so many different things that you also get to learn about each other, and that will foster a much more respectful working environment. And yeah, monitoring workload, work-life balance, I think this is obviously what a lot of companies are also saying from the beginning, but it's important that you make sure that people actually have a healthy work-life balance, because otherwise people will get more stressed, miss more deadlines, and in the end it always backfires. If you just put more and more work on people, maybe at the beginning more work will get done, but then people lose their motivation, and
Burnout.
you will notice this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And then, of course, yes, this is one of the favorite items in human resources, the employee recognition programs, which is, as you know, the constant battle with the management teams, because in human resources, we always try our best to get more benefits for the employees, to be able to create fair, rewarding programs so that people feel appreciated and at the same time rewarded. So they're motivated in order to do their best for the next year and the year after, get frustrated, or either because of the lack of proper employee recognition programs, proper rewarding programs. I have been reading, I'm going to give you a very quick example. It's all over LinkedIn. Probably you have seen it. I don't want another gym membership or another,
Yeah.
I don't want to see another fruit basket in the morning at my
The
desk.
fruit baskets, yeah.
I'm done with fruit, right? I want to see a bigger bonus, and I want to see more flexible hours, because post-COVID, almost everyone, after this pandemic, everyone has shifted to a hybrid work mode and valuing more, their lives, the value of life, right, outside the office, and how fragile life can be. So everyone is appreciating more the flexibility on the hours, the hybrid work mode, getting into the office a few days a week, then the rest of the days work from home. And obviously the monetary reward, because at the end of the day, everyone has to sustain a household.
Yeah, very true.
Okay, so let's move on. The impact now on mental health.
Yes. I think over the next few slides, we're going to look at it a bit deeper as well, and the different aspects there are. But just as a quick overview, of course, if you feel yourself that you're feeling stressed, you're feeling unhappy at work, this will also affect you mentally. If there's a lot of maybe fighting at work or conflict, like I know for myself, for me, I'm someone, I will lay in bed late at night and I will think about it. Did I do something? How is it going to be tomorrow? These things will impact you. They will impact your mood. Some people will get more irritable. Maybe you will be like starting fights where you didn't want to start fights, or you're more like, you come home, you don't want to talk so much anymore. So you will feel that there is many different ways. Maybe you don't feel motivated to go to the gym anymore. You just want to go into bed and stay inside and just change into comfortable clothes. You feel that the way that you would usually go about things is starting to shift. And maybe you don't feel so much like yourself anymore, not so bubbly, depending on your personality, of course. But the longer these periods go on, the more the difficulties can go into dysfunction, like sleep issues can turn into insomnia. So all of these small problems that you start feeling at the beginning, if nothing is done about them, they will just probably progress to get worse. And so will the impacts also on your mental health. Your whole life quality might feel like it's getting reduced over time. That's why it's so important to have a better understanding of it and maybe see how you can work against it.
It is so important to look into each case individually and focus separately, because each case is different. And the moment you realize how much difficulty and pain your colleagues are going through on a private level, on a personal level, and most of the times they share these problems with you, and then obviously when things are very serious, you have to seek expert solutions, and you need to address a business psychologist. I saw something, I want to quote something that I read online that I'd like to mention at this stage to bridge the discussion. In our fast-paced world, the pressures and challenges we face can often take a toll on our mental well-being. It's essential to recognize that mental health is just as important as physical health, and it deserves the same level of attention and care. By addressing mental health openly and compassionately, we can break down the stigma and create a culture where everyone feels valued and supported. So let's hear it from you, Stella, about the signs of a toxic workplace.
There's different ways that you can feel that maybe the toxic environment or the unhealthy environment that you're in is affecting you. And I think we're kind of split this up over a few slides. But just kind of the basics are, for example, that you feel like you're constantly stressed. This can, of course, lead to burnout. But like we touched on earlier, you can maybe feel your mood change. You are more irritable. Things might annoy you more quickly. You feel like you have a lack of motivation to do tasks that you maybe previously enjoyed because you just don't have the energy anymore. Because like you said, like things are very energy draining as well, whether it's helping yourself, helping someone else, even with the best of intentions. There's only so much we have in our own cup at some point, and we don't have that much energy left anymore. And this can also be due to, for example, poor communication, lack of trust. So depending how the environment is with your team colleagues, is it a safe space? Do you feel that you can ask for help, or people make you feel like you're stupid asking the same question over and over again? And we know that if it's a hostile environment, you're less likely to actually learn something, because you should encourage people asking questions. You should encourage people feeling better and feeling safe and getting things done, having positive, open feedback. So if that isn't given.
We find this a lot, Stella, just to add something, we find this a lot with companies when teams are understaffed.
Yeah.
So when you see a department that is understaffed and there's very few people, so many tasks, and there isn't much time to educate or to explain in detail how things should be done, then frustration levels increase significantly. And this is where we notice resignations, people dropping the team quickly within a month or within the first couple of months from their joining, exactly because they don't receive the support that they should be receiving.
Exactly. And I think this also links into both of the last two things. First of all, the high employee turnover. If you notice that there's a lot of people coming and going in the company, then there might be an underlying issue that might need to be addressed, whether it's people are understaffed or you need more support or more time. And also that people feel undervalued, unappreciated, especially if there's a lot of things pushed upon you and people just expect you to do all of the work because you don't complain. So if there's not even like recognition or anything, then people will become, of course, unhappy with an increased workload, no recognition, and that will also lead to not feeling yourself your best in a workplace.
Which is always detrimental to the company, because the cost of hiring, again, of going through the process of screening and hiring a new person and getting them involved and getting them educated about the company practices and the policies and everything, and is tremendous compared to being able to develop the people who are already with you, to motivate the employees who are already within the company structure, and they just need training programs, professional support by their managers, their team. So, okay, you gave us an overview previously. Depression, burnout, like we mentioned just now, increased stress and anxiety. We already mentioned about the psychosomatic impact. I would say is the biggest silent killer of our days. What do you think about?
So it always, of course, depends on the situation and on the time periods. You can go through depressive periods of time without being completely depressed. I'm not gonna go on to like the diagnostics of it, but some people can, of course, go through depressive periods and then feel better on like after a while. You don't actually have to be fully depressed. But the big problem is with mental health impacts also that you feel maybe less confident about yourself, or you're being too harsh on yourself. And that will also isolate you, because if there isn't an environment where you can voice your concerns, you will be feeling sad and maybe alone and a bit more outcast. And that's, like you said, it's oftentimes the most silent killer, because people are worried to talk about depression or about not feeling good, when I think most of us have felt maybe not depressed in that sense, but not their best for some periods of times. Usually there's up and downs. That's why it's so important at a workplace to be able to voice these concerns before people fall more into like a bubble where they are too afraid to get back out or to talk to
Close into
anyone about it.
themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I was reading yesterday that in the US, about 20% of the population is being antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. If you think about it, it's an enormous.
Yeah, I think that is always the problem. From a psychological standpoint, there's always the difference between the psychiatric and psychological point. Of course, sometimes it's best if you just talk to someone. Sometimes medications are needed, but I think it is not the best way for for countries to just prescribe medication, because that will just hinder the symptoms, but it doesn't change the cause where it comes from. So ideally, you wouldn't even need to give people medication in some situations if you would just eliminate the cause of the problems. If you, instead of changing maybe the work environment, the work hours, the work-life balance. So because every medication that you get has side effects, and it takes some time to work with your body. And for some people, it can work out great. But for a lot of people, it will interfere maybe with their life, their moods, their hormones. And there's just a lot if you put something else into your body. So 20% is a huge number, definitely.
As we analyzed a bit on the physical health impacts, let's not forget that once the body has been affected, then everything shuts down, essentially.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not just about perform at the workplace. We're not able to perform within the family, with the children, with our friends, within our social environment, right? Everything shuts down completely. And then is where we find ourselves in a completely different behavior pattern.
Yeah.
Behavior patterns are changing. So what do we normally see at the workplace as an impact?
I think the biggest thing is that people probably feel overwhelmed, stressed, they don't sleep well, and therefore they become sick more easily. Whether it's because they are mentally exhausted and really need time off to process it and to get back into their normal life, or whether it's actually the immune system being weakened. I mean, just getting a few nights of very poor sleep, we know how we feel in the morning. It's difficult to get out of bed. You feel tired, you feel lethargic, your body gets weaker. Maybe you add tons of coffee or cigarettes or anything on top of it, and that will break down your immune system, make you sleep even worse. And then at some point, your body just screams for help. So you will either feel mentally exhausted or then also physically exhausted, and probably have to take a sick leave. The anxiety around the workplace will grow. So it's it's a vicious cycle, unfortunately, then.
And also on top of that, because I have seen it happening, a negative environment, it creates a feeling of not being wanted, obviously, at the workplace. So automatically, the natural is to try to avoid the workplace. Finding excuses not to show up at the workplace, because you don't feel comfortable anymore working within the specific field. So you're looking for ways to escape.
Exactly.
With excuses, coming in late or leaving early or not showing up at work. And then obviously the even worse impact is when people are so mentally frustrated, they result into substance abuse, which is something that we see frequently in the Western countries.
Yeah, a lot. That's true. I mean, it's very normalized oftentimes in the Western countries, also the drinking, in order to cope with struggles. I think it's a very openly accepted concept as well. I've had a hard day, I'm gonna go get a few beers. And of course, sometimes a few beers is fine, but if it becomes a pattern, then that will also affect you mentally, your sleep. And then you will need even more coffee in the morning to wake up. And basically, you're just substituting substances for the feelings, for the energy.
Okay. Can you please tell us a bit about the steps that we can take in order to maintain a balanced mental status at the workplace, especially when we're going through so much stress?
Yes, so I'm just trying to skip this part of it. I think it's very difficult always to talk about this, because usually if it's an environment that is extremely toxic, we talked about this before as well when we met, you shouldn't be opposed to actually thinking about maybe changing your job. Of course, there's things from your own side that you can try and do. Maybe this starts with like a personal detachment, you know, you kind of try to detach yourself from the work persona. The job really is just a job. You can feel it maybe taking over your life, taking over your thoughts. So there's things like that, building your resilience. But maybe if it doesn't get better, a lot of the times people say like give yourself 3 to 6 months, depending on the stress, of course. This is just like a vague number. But if nothing gets better, all the tactics that you're trying, if it doesn't get better, then this is your life. If there's a possibility of maybe changing into a different work environment, you shouldn't put it off the table. But some things that you can do, I think we're also going to touch on this next time, but the biggest thing for me is always resilience. And I watched a great TED Talk actually from a woman called Lucy Hone, and she came up with basically three main things of resilience. So it's important that you acknowledge the suffering, basically. So you understand, okay, this is going on, because at the beginning, when something happens, we oftentimes say, okay, it's going to get better, it's going to get better. Maybe it's a bad day, but it's important to understand the problem in order to then find solutions for it. So
as soon as possible, right?
Exactly, yeah. Make sure that you don't feel like a victim, so you don't feel powerless. Because oftentimes people say, oh, why is this happening to me? Unfortunately, these things will happen to a lot of people. So it's important to understand that this has nothing to do with you. You just have to kind of find your own plan, your own journey in order to attack the problem, basically.
And it's really important. And I think in one of our episodes, we will cover this as a subject, how to escape the victimization trap.
Yeah.
Because it's a psychological and mental trap that we find ourselves frequently falling into, exactly because, in my personal view, we lack a deep self-awareness. I think it's another topic for another discussion. There is so much work required for us to do with ourselves before we come into a team. So, okay, obviously caring, right? Another important characteristic.
Yes, I just wanted to add on to that. It definitely plays a huge part of kind of your background, maybe like it's the flora and fauna. Like, of course, to an extent, maybe you had parents who showed you how to be very resilient from the start. But sometimes even the most resilient people will get into a work environment which will be almost impossible. So you can be a very strong person, and it can really, you can bring the best possible qualities with you. And sometimes the work environment will still manage to break those down, unfortunately. This is one thing which comes with like caring for yourself and resilience. This is the question also from Lucy Hone, which I ask myself quite a lot actually. And it's, what I'm doing right now, is it helping or harming me? Is it helping the situation or is it harming? And this is like with overthinking, for example, if I'm laying in bed at night and I'm going over all the work issues, is that helping the situation, or is it just stopping me from sleeping? Is it harming me? Is it making me more anxious? So just a little question, this works for like all kind of situations. If you change your mindset, how you think about things, and look more for the benefits, focus on the positives, this is something that really does the trick. Because just as a quick, easy example, if someone tells us, oh, good job, you did a good job at work, that compliment will usually flow away. If someone gives you like a specific criticism at work, this will usually stick with you longer. Yes. So that's why I always repeat this to like the patients, the clients. If something positive happened, write it down, remember it, because unfortunately our brains are more wired to remember the negative things. So even if it's one negative comment, it will stick with us longer than if someone gave us something positive. That's why we have to really, like the brain, like use it like a muscle, like train it to also focus on the positives that happen.
And you're absolutely right. We should allow ourselves a moment of self-praise. Yeah. A little pat on the shoulder, bravo, you did well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. We should allow this to ourselves. Just a moment of a small victory, just to raise our spirits and help us remember the values and the reasons why we're pushing through in order to succeed at the workplace. I love this phrase that you have placed here. You deal with stress, or stress will deal with you. That's true.
Unfortunately, yeah. If you don't deal with it, it will show through your physical, your mental health. It will make sure to find a way to stop you from what you're doing.
I love this as a motto. Now, Stella, I think we've covered a lot today regarding mental health and the toxic environments and the signs of how to, identify a toxic environment and actually help ourselves identify if we are experiencing a toxic environment. I'm sure that many of our friends might recognize themselves in past situations, hopefully not at their current workplace. And now we have a small taster about our next episode, right?
Yes. So I think we're going to, yeah, go ahead. No, you go ahead, of course.
No.
Yeah, I think we're going to look at a few different practices as well, managing the daily stress. Like I said before, sometimes you can't change your work environment, so you kind of have to see if there's some possibilities you can do to a certain extent, of course. So we're going to look a bit at one of my favorite topics, mindfulness, which of course most people probably heard about it, some boundary settings, and also a positive work environment. Today we focused on the toxic one, and then we're going to see how maybe a more positive communication style
can... And how we can build a positive
yes,
work environment, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so at the next episode, we're going to be talking about how we can build positive relationships, how we can mend broken relationships, problematic relationships at the workplace, how we can seek professional support, in which cases we should be looking for professional support. When, cases go beyond the human resources capabilities. I love the last one, practice gratitude, like we just said, right? The self-praise, which is absolutely brilliant. I think that we have reached the end of our episode today. And I think that as we embark on this journey together, we should remember how to prioritize mental health. And that mental health, I think, is not just a one-day event, but a continuous. And at the end of the day, by working together, we can build a healthier, more resilient community where everyone has the opportunity to shine and thrive. So thank you so much once again. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Let's make this World Mental Health Day a catalyst for positive change. And please stay tuned until our next episode, where we will be covering another exciting topic, always in the space of mental health and mindfulness. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.